Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of T.N.T. Garage and Performance. And like I had stated before, we're going to attack the wheel tubs of the Checker Marathon here because we need to finish the back of the floor. So these trailer fenders will be our key to starting the structure of that. So you could say that today that we're, tub thumping, which... Speaking of music, I was getting some supplies earlier and I heard Shania Twain come on the radio. And I do not know what is with that woman. First, she's singing about any man of hers, right? Any man of hers better walk the line, he better be on time, and she can do what she pleases. Which is fine. That's fine, I guess. You want to be that way, that's fine. But then she's got another song about nothing impressing her much. Like, okay, you got a car. That don't impress me much. It's like, come on, Shania, what do you want? You want a guy to do everything and be at your beck and call? You don't even care what he has? I can't even understand why women want to be that way. And then they sing about it and make songs about it. Okay, as you can see, we've got a lot of work ahead of us, seeing as the fact that I've got one leg in the car and one leg on the floor. So we've got to get this area closed up. The problem is, and why this is going to be a fairly big undertaking, is that panel is completely white. My original thought, when we still had it down at my buddy's shop, was to just cut along the wheel tub there and replace that piece and then build off of that. But once I got looking at it, these wheel tubs are not in tremendous shape. You can see under here, this is all rotted where the original floor went. And the more I dug in, the more I found. The seat belt anchors are rotted out. So what we're gonna have to do, and the first thing we're gonna have to do, is pretty much cut the wheel tub, this panel out on both sides, and then probably cut across here where the original seat back sat down and just get rid of this and make new panels. So I think the best way to do this is to get our wheel tubs and this part cut out, and then we can focus on getting these inner panels replaced. We'll see how that goes. I've got some new tools I want to try out as far as when it comes to cutting and flanging the new pieces, but to do this, we're just going to have to do it the old-fashioned way, get the death wheel out, and just start hacking. I got most of the seat belts out. That one's being stubborn, but it's going to go away anyway. I did want to keep the original seat belt anchors. That's not going to work. We'll just have to mount a harness like we're going to do in the front. So I'm going to get a grinder set up and we're going to get to cutting this out. And I think that's what we're going to have to do. So let's get to it. Well, we got quite a bit of crap out of there. Old rusty stuff. So what I'm thinking is getting those panels mocked up there. Just gonna take my flap wheel and grind the old panel off, kind of like so it looks like this. Grind the rest of that off, and if we get our inner panels in, we could start laying a wheel tub kind of in there and then mark where we need to cut. That way everything will line up. That's just kind of the way I'm brainstorming here. And once we get these side panels in, we can work on this, get that bottom shelf built, because we need those inner panels right there to start doing our bulkhead. So I'm going to grind that off and see where we kind of wind up here. All right, I've got one panel made for the driver's side. Got it flanged, and it fits pretty good in the car. Now the next thing to do is to copy it. So once I cut that out, I actually traced it on this one here. And I'm going to do something a little different when it comes to cutting the metal. I went to Old Hobo Freight, got myself a metal shear because I'm just kind of tired of getting sparks thrown at me all the time, going through 1,000 discs and all that just to get some sheet metal cut. So this works a little bit better, at least it does for now. We'll see how well it holds. I like that a lot better. Well, now that we got our sheet cut out, which was a lot easier with using a shear instead of a grinding wheel, we can start marking where we're going to make our bends. I've already got the mark on the back side here, so that can flange in. And then here, I need to make my measurements in the mark so I can flange it out. Because on the interior of the car, this used to be a rolled edge. And I'm not going to go through all the work to make that nice rolled edge because race car. I'm going to measure it out so far and then just break it 90 degrees. So it won't be as smooth, but it'll definitely serve a purpose. So I want to mark it on this side so I can line it up properly. And I also have my measurements here of making a panel. And I know that this flange coming in is 1 7/8 towards the door and then narrows down to 1 1/4 at the back glass. So we'll mark that out, 1 7/8. 1 1/4. Now this would be a lot easier with a sheet metal brake, but the closest one I know of is 45 minutes away. So I'm going to go to the old standard. My piece of rail here, so. Now, I can line up my marks and we can make our bends. There's our flange going to the back. And now the front's going to be a little tricky folding this over because we want to keep it from dipping or bowing, otherwise you're going to bow the whole piece. So I'm going to grab a pair of vice grips so I can hold it at my mark and it won't slide out. Get our mark. Make sure we got enough. There. Now it won't slide off of my makeshift anvil as I'm going to make my bend. Well, we got our bend. Now we can go ahead and kind of smooth some of this stuff out. So I'm just going to use one of my dollars here. I think that'll work nicely. Now, we can line our two pieces up and trace it where I made my trimming to go around the pillars. There we go. Now all I got to do is trim this out, do a little shaping of the panel, and we can start dropping it in and pretty much get it to fit like this one. Well, we got our one panel pretty much wrapped up here. I got my holes drilled for my spot welds on the inner structure, and then when I was looking at it, I decided I better drill some 1-inch holes because behind this panel is access to the nuts that hold the outer quarter panel on. So I'm gonna want to access them in the future. That's why I drilled the holes. But it's shaped, that's all ready to go. All right. Well, before I get my inner panel welded in, I made up some braces that'll go from the old inner structure down to the inner door structure. And the reason why I'm putting these in is originally this inner panel was part of the this whole inner like body panel. So it just wrapped down, welded to this structure, was part of the wheel tub, and then there was an upper piece that came down and was spot welded to that. I don't see the merit in replacing this whole inner structure again. If I can just brace from here to here, all this is still strong. It's all 90 degrees bent over, and then the outer panel bolts to it. So my thought process is this will be plenty to keep this from flexing down, and really once I put this new inner panel in, it'll tie everything together. So that's my thought process on it. If I'm wrong, oh well. I mean, this is really is a one-of-a-kind car. There's no restoration manual or repair manual for one of these like there's a Tri-5 Chevy or a shoebox Ford or a muscle car, to where there's a lot of knowledge out there or a lot of aftermarket parts. You know, instead of having to hand fabricate all this and pray that it works, we're just gonna bypass it, strengthen it up, and get our panel in. So let's do that. I've got my welder and everything in here. Welder's on, gas is on, I got my welding helmet. So let's see what we can accomplish. There we go. Got her tacked in. Let those cool, and I'm going to do several tacks around it just to strengthen it up. Well, and now we got our brace in. So that actually strengthened all that up pretty good. It keeps this inner piece of the door structure from moving in or out. So now we can fit our replacement panel in. And I'm going to lay a couple tacks because I'm going to have to kind of push this in as I tack it. So I'll have to take my hammer and just bend this down where it needs to go, but that should be pretty good. So I'm going to work my way over this panel, get it tacked in. I've got a bunch of holes punched up here so I can weld it to my inner sheet metal that I cut and kind of turned up. So I'm going to get this panel in, cleaned up, and we'll lay the wheel well in, the inner wheel well, and then we can mark where we got to make our cut for that. So let's keep going. we got both inner panels welded in. They're nice and solid. That's a good part of the car there. Now when it comes to my inner fenders, this took a little bit of thinking, which I just took when I cut the old ones out, I just kind of laid it over my new tubs and kind of got a rough estimation of where it's going to go. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm not running the tubs clear into the trunk. Well, that's because this inner trunk panel goes all the way from here to the taillight. That's actually a structure of the car. So to cut all that out, get everything in there, weld it in, all that, I don't want to risk the structural integrity of the backside of the car any more than we already had when we had to put the floors in it and everything. That's good. We're going to leave it alone, and we're just going to install the inner fenders like that. Now, one thing I didn't show on camera because I was busy mathing it out myself is how to get this radius cut. Simply, I just held the fender where I wanted it, and I started a mark just as far as I could go and know that it was on, and then I just cut, slid it in, cut, slid it further in till I had it flush across the whole panel, because that inner panel actually bows out towards the outside of the car. So that's how I got that. And as far as the other inner fender here, I now have a template that I can lay on that one to get my proper arc. So, how am I going to mount this? Well, this is the magic in having some of this 16 gauge bent up angle iron. So, I've got it marked out where I want it to sit so we can lay the fender on top of it and weld it in. Well, I've got my piece tacked in here and slide the fender up in, and that's about the way I want it. And actually what I'll do, instead of plug welding this, I'll probably weld it from the bottom and tack it a couple times on the back side here. Most of this is going to get seam sealed anyway, so that's just the way I'm going to do it. So I'm going to start tacking it to our inner panel here once I get it lined up and I'm happy with it. And that should get me set up so I can close it in from here to here. Do the same on the other side, and then we can actually start working on this hole that my legs are in. We got that tacked in. I'm going to throw a few more tacks on it, and we're going to work on getting it closed in. So that's pretty solid. Now we can work on closing in our panel. So I'm going to grab the original closeout panel that was in here and figure out just how we need to do it. Now a little bit of cardboard ought to help us along this journey. So I traced the shape of the inner panel that was in this, and we can kind of use that to approximate what we're gonna need. So close it out to there, grab my marker. This will give us a general shape of what we're gonna need. So we got a line here, and then from this X down to the corner, we know we can just cut that straight. So I'm going to cut this out and transfer it onto the half moon shape that closes this out, and we'll be able to chop out a panel and get it in here. All right, well, we've got our closeout panel for the tub here, and that just sits right up in there. So I'm gonna get this in there, get my welding helmet on, and we're gonna tack this in. And then we pretty much got a complete tub over here. I'm pretty happy with that. It's gonna take quite a bit of welding because I'll just weld this seam, make it look nice. Any of these like interior seams like this, I want to weld up, you know, just keep tacking over and over, grind it down, make it look nicer. I mean, this is a gasser. It doesn't need to be, you know, show car inside, but I want it to be, you know, you're not catching yourself on sharp edges back here once I get seats in. But I'm pretty happy with the result of that one. I'm going to weld this plate from the wheel well in so I don't have to put a bunch of tacks there. I just did that to hold it, but yeah, now we can move on to the other side, and once we get both tubs in, we can start closing this out. Well, now we can start working on our front little bulkhead to finish this hole I'm standing in. So I've got some more of this 16 gauge angle, and where you see the spot welds here, that's where my hat channel is. So we're gonna end up having to cut this part of the floor out just behind the hat channel, and then I will cut this to weld on top, and then that will hold our sheet metal for the bulkhead. I'm actually going to use two of these, one on the floor, one a little higher up, so we can form our bulkhead. So I'm going to measure from a specific point to a specific point. Reason being is because I want it straight here, and then we're going to angle it back towards the doorpost here, just like the factory was. It came out and then straight across. So I'm going to take a couple measurements, make sure I got my Sharpie somewhere, which is outside of the car, of course. So I'm going to grab that, and we can get to working on getting this all measured up. So now let's make our initial measurement from the inner rocker panel, and we're going to come let's say 6 inches in, because that'll line us up with our bead roll on this side of the floor. So if we go 6 inches, make a mark, and then 6 inches again, make a mark. Now I know how long the lengths I need from this point into the tunnel. Yep, there we go. So mark this out at 22, and we will make a cut. So basically what I'm going to do with those pieces is lay them right on top of the hat channel, and then we'll have an area to weld our sheet metal to. So next thing we need to do is also pick a spot where we want our angles to line up, measure for that, and get those made up. I've got everything measured to cut the tail of this floor off and angle it back. Equal on both sides. Should look pretty good. So I'm going to cut this out. Then I'm going to mark a straight line across the back here. Cut that out, so hopefully all the big death wheel stuff will be out of the way. And we can start working on getting our frame in here for our bulkhead. So I'm going to switch to a cut-off disc, and we'll get this part of the floor out of there. Onto the fun stuff. All right, I'm going to clean up my edges here a little bit, and then we're going to work on getting these tacked into place. And then that'll provide our structure. So let's go ahead, switch back to our flat wheel. And clean her up. All right, we got our lower framework in. I do have a piece of metal that we're going to use for this. So let's measure what we got for the center. That's 51 3/4 there. So 51 3/4. And then from here to here, I've got my measurements all the way across. I'll add them up and we'll transfer it to our piece of metal, bend it where it needs to be bent, and we can tack that in, and then that'll set our height for our upper structure. So I'm going to take a break and we'll get back to this. Alrighty, we got our step-up panel done, and I'll explain to you guys how I did that once I get my welder set up. Okay. So, what this panel was actually the first draft of the inner rocker on the driver's side. That's why it's already bead rolled. So I went ahead and measured my lower structure, and that's where I got my measurement for my bends. And then I just placed it behind it, trimmed out the tunnel, and it should fit pretty good. Get her into place. And there we go. So I'm going to start by tacking this in place, working from the middle out. That way when I get to the ends, if I got to shape anything, I won't put a bow in the middle of it. So let's start by throwing down a couple tacks, and we'll get this thing all kinds of nice and tidy in there. I think that's going to look pretty good. And then we could just buzz the top of this across, and we will be nice and happy. And by the way, I use that Harbor Freight hole puncher, and that just does a great job for punching holes so you can spot weld stuff. Well, I just got a few more tacks to make on this side, and our panel is in. We can start our top structure and then start working on filling everything in. So, break time. All right, well, now that we got our bulkhead figured out, I just need to do a little trimming over here and finish that side. We're about ready to fill this hole. The thing is, I'm not just going to fill it with empty sheet metal. We need to have some sort of support under here. So that's where this square tubing comes in. I've got quite a few chunks of it, and that one's actually narrow. But what I'm going to do, because the floor is going to come across flat and then kick up to this rear panel, I'm going to put a stringer across where I want that kick up to be, going fender well to fender well. And then we'll build probably 3 off of that from the bulkhead to the structure, or the crossbar, and then a few going up into here. That way, with the seats in, we got plenty of structure, I could bead roll these panels, but they're only this wide. I don't think there's much to be gained. I mean, yes, you gain strength with bead rolling any size of sheet, but for me to run it down, get it done, bring it back up, and put it in, I'll just build a structure underneath. So we're going to run our sheet that's flat 12 inches back. So I'm going to measure back from my bulkhead 12 inches and just kind of eyeball it as far as level, just to put a mark right there. And right there. So I'm going to write that down so I don't forget. 50.5. And now that we got our 12-inch mark laid out, I'm also going to measure from the ground. I'm going to make sure that all this is straight anyway. About 18.5 and 18.5. So if I measure from the ground to where I want this, we should end up with it level. All right, we've got our piece that's gonna go in here. Just like that. So, got it ground down, got the edges chamfered. I'm going to tack it into place, check my measurements, and then weld it in fully. And then we could put a couple of stringers from the bulkhead to the bar and from the bar up to here after I get this cleaned up. Well, we got our bar in. And I'm going to use the same 16 gauge angle to make our stringers here. So I'm going to measure from here to here and then trim it out so it fits flush, and we should be good. So I'm going to make 4 of those and probably 3 to go up here. So I'm going to get to fabricating those and we'll get them tacked in. Well, we got our little pieces fabricated, and those will drop right in there, and one, give us a place to secure our sheet metal and provide support. So now we just need to measure where we want these things. That should give me an even spread. Yep, 14 inches from each door, 12 inches apart, 12 in the center. That should work. I've got those all cleaned up, and we can go ahead and lay these in, get them tacked. There. Now we got a decent structure that, one, we've got support so we can mount the seats, and 2, everything should lay nice and flat. So I'm going to finish welding this structure in, and then I'm going to cut that line and run 3 stringers from here to there. So let's keep rolling. Well, as you can see, I got my supports in. I also tacked some to the inside of the wheel tubs to help support and have a place to attach the first part of our rear floor here. Now, just like I did everything else, I made measurements, transferred it to paper, and made up this piece. Now, right here, I actually have a flanger tool that I can go along and flange it and bend it a little bit, and I'll show you guys that when I go to do this part. So, we'll just slide this up and in, right where it needs to be. Right about there. There we go. Now I can go ahead and tack this bad boy down. So I'm going to start in the middle here, work my way out. Alright, well, we got this panel in. Now it's time to make this panel, and I'll kind of walk you through my process. I haven't really done that all video. I've just been staying busy. So, got my notepad, and first thing I'm going to do is kind of make a rough sketch of what this panel is going to look like. So we got that. We got a kick out. We got a kick out. We got out, out, down, down. And we got an angle, another angle, and across the bottom. So now I need to get measurements for all these. So we're going to start between the wheel wells. That is 50.5. So 50.5. That's this measurement. See if it's the same at the bottom of the wheel well. It actually widens up to 50.75. There we go. I'm going to measure the edge of the wheel well, which is 3 5/8 on that side, 3 5/8 on that side. So 3 5/8, 3 5/8. There we go. Now we're going to measure out here. Five and a quarter on that side. About 5 3/8 on both those, so I have a little extra. 5 3/8, 5 3/8. Now we're going to take a measurement from here to here, and that'll give us our angle. $12 inches. 12 inches. Yep. So 12 from here to there. And that should get us everything other than 2 more measurements. Where the bend is, 6 3/4. There we go. And get our final measurement from here to there. 51 3/4. That might look like a lot of gibberish, but this is how we're going to lay out the panel. So we'll go out to my little workbench and start working on the piece of sheet metal. All right, we got our sheet of steel laid out. I know the overall width from inner panel to inner panel is 64 1/8. And what I want to do as well is add about 3/4 of an inch to each end. So we'll add 1.5 inches, which will give us 65 5/8 total, because I'm going to flange the ends to help support it. So we're going to go 65 5/8, make a mark. Then we are going to find where I laid my square. And we're going to run my mark up so we have that reference all the way across. Now 3/4 of an inch from each side. That way we know that's going to be our flange. There we go. Again, make that mark. That's going to be our flange to end. And now we know what we're working with. So, next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the depth, which is, we got 3 5/8, got 12 inches there, 12 inches overall. Gonna throw a couple marks there. All right. I'm going to throw a straight edge down and get that line in. Right there. There we go. That's how deep our panel's going to be. All right. 5/8 on the edge. You get our general measurement, which is, get my ruler here. So, it's 3 5/8 on both sides. 5/8. 3 5/8. 5 3/8. All right, now that we got all this laid out, we know that we're going to flange here. So just finish my mark. That way I know where that's going to be. That there, flange there. We're going to flange against the wheel well. So 3/4 inch mark, 3/4 inch mark. Same thing over here. 3/4 inch mark. 3/4 inch mark. There we go. Now we should have everything set to cut. Now I'm going to double check all my measurements and my marks here, and we should be good to go. Yep. Yep. Pretty damn close. Yep. Yep. All right. Now, as far as cutting the sheet metal, this is what I'm going to use. This is my air shear, and it has been, well, a godsend doing this project. So we're going to start by nipping the corners off, and we'll run this sheet completely out. Now we just got to do a little bit of grinding here in these corners where we meet the wheel wells, but I'd say that'll be a pretty good fit once we get her set up in there. All right, we got her set in. I'm going to tack the center and get her all happy. Well, there we have it. The floor is finally done in the Checker Marathon. This entire bottom of the car is all new from about the middle of the firewall down, back, and all the way to this rear pass-through for the trunk. The remaining floor in the car starts here and goes to the trunk. So all the structure is now right here. And as you can see, I don't think it looks that bad. We've got, you know, our aftermarket wheel tubs in. We got the side panels in, complete with the holes that we use to access the bolts that hold the outer quarters on, which I'll just get some 1-inch rubber plugs for those. So, you know, doing burnouts, all that stuff doesn't come through. The only thing really left inside and under the car now, it's just the finish work, finish welding. I'm going to seam seal the bottom side and just get it all sealed up so it's fairly weather tight for, you know, a 1973 Checker. But all in all, I'm pretty happy with this. It was a long process, a lot of fab work in a car that was otherwise a basket case that needed almost all the structural sheet metal replaced on it. So kind of nice to be able to kick back and just think about how I'm going to mount a set of racing buckets back here for passengers along with racing buckets in the front. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I know there's been a lot of fab work on this car. I want to move on to more fun stuff to do, but this is part of the process, and the reason why I continue to document it is showing you guys just how much work goes into a project before you decide to go out and undertake something and decide if you want to put this much work in. So next video is going to be on brute force. We're going to finally do that exhaust manifold. That was kind of the plan for this week, but it got pushed back, and I'm happy I got this done. So you can find this and all my other projects right here on YouTube. So go ahead, look them up, you know, check them out. There's quite a few videos on this, a lot of videos on my other projects. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Every time you guys like or subscribe, it helps the channel grow even more, because you guys are doing awesome so far, checking stuff out, and I can't thank you enough. You can also find me and updates on projects along with the releases of new videos at T.N.T. Garage and Performance on Facebook and T.N.T. Garage and Performance on Instagram. So I think I'm going to kick back, enjoy this a little bit, and then get cleaned up, get ready to go to work. So remember, guys, till next time, if it ain't broke, fix it till it is. We'll see you soon.